The metallic clang echoed through the marble hallway like a gunshot, silencing every conversation in the courthouse. Devon's walker lay twisted on the cold floor, its wheels spinning uselessly as Officer Juan Nguyen stood over it, her face twisted with contempt. The 12-year-old boy swayed dangerously, his thin legs trembling as he fought to maintain balance without the support he desperately needed. "I said no props in my courthouse," Hoa barked, her voice cutting through the stunned silence. "This kid's been faking it all morning, using that thing for attention." Devon's mother, Keisha Washington, rushed forward from the wooden bench where she'd been sitting, her hands reaching protectively toward her son. The custody hearing that had brought them here seemed suddenly insignificant compared to the nightmare unfolding before her eyes. She watched in horror as Devon's knees buckled, his cerebral palsy making it impossible for him to stand without assistance. "Ma'am, please step back," Hoa commanded, her hand moving instinctively to her radio. "Your son was disrupting court proceedings with his theatrical performance." The accusation hung in the air like poison. Devon, who had been born 3 months premature and spent the first year of his life fighting for every breath, whose motor skills had been compromised by lack of oxygen during those critical early weeks, was being accused of pretending to be disabled. His dark eyes, usually bright with intelligence and humor, now filled with tears of humiliation and confusion. Keisha felt her world tilting. She had brought Devon to the courthouse because her ex-husband's lawyer had insisted on his presence during the custody modification hearing. Marcus Washington wanted increased visitation rights, claiming that Keisha was using Devon's disability to keep him from his son. The irony was devastating now, as Devon struggled to remain upright, while an officer of the court dismissed his very real medical condition as performance art. "Officer, there's been a misunderstanding," Keisha said, her voice steady despite the panic rising in her chest. "My son has cerebral palsy. He needs that walker to move safely." Hoa's eyes narrowed, her badge catching the fluorescent light as she shifted her position. She had been working courthouse security for 15 years, and in her experience, people always had excuses. Children especially were manipulative, using whatever tools they could find to get sympathy or special treatment. This black family was no different from the dozens of others who tried to work the system every day. "I've seen plenty of kids suddenly develop limps when they want something from the judge," Hoa replied, her tone dripping with skepticism. "Your boy was walking fine when he came in here. Now he's suddenly disabled. Convenient timing." The words hit Keisha like physical blows. She thought of the years of physical therapy, the countless doctor's appointments, the nights she'd held Devon as he cried from muscle spasms. She remembered the day they'd gotten the walker, how Devon's face had lit up with joy at the newfound independence it provided. Every step he took was a victory against the limitations his condition imposed. Other families in the courthouse began to take notice. Maria Santos, waiting with her own son for a traffic court hearing, pulled out her phone and began recording. She had worked with disabled children at the local elementary school and recognized the signs of cerebral palsy immediately. Devon's gait, the way he held his hands, the careful precision of his movements. These were not symptoms that could be faked by a child. "This is wrong," Maria whispered to her son, but her voice carried in the tense silence. "That boy really needs that walker." Attorney Jennifer Kim, who had been reviewing case files at a nearby table, looked up from her papers. She had been practicing family law for 8 years and had never seen such a blatant display of misconduct from courthouse security. The officers' actions were not only cruel, but potentially illegal, violating multiple disability rights statutes. "Officer Nguyen," Jennifer called out, rising from her seat. "I need to speak with you about this situation." Hua turned toward the attorney, her expression defensive. "This is security business. Counselor." The boy was causing a disruption. By existing with a disability, Jennifer's voice was sharp with indignation. What disruption exactly? Using mobility equipment he's legally entitled to have. The confrontation was escalating rapidly. Devon, still swaying without his walker, looked between the adults with growing fear. This was supposed to be a routine court appearance, something his mother had prepared him for by explaining how judges made decisions about families. Instead, he was at the center of a conflict he couldn't understand, his basic dignity under attack. Keisha knelt beside her son, wrapping her arms around him for support. "It's okay, baby," she whispered, though her own voice was shaking. "Mama's here." The morning had started normally enough. Devon had been excited about missing school for what he called an adventure, carefully choosing his best shirt and tie for the court appearance. He'd practiced walking with his walker through their apartment, wanting to look confident and grown up for the judge. Keisha had been proud of his maturity, his determination to do everything right. Now that same walker lay discarded on the floor like trash, its bright blue frame a stark contrast against the gray marble. Devon's fingers dug into his mother's shoulders as he fought to maintain his balance, his legs trembling with the effort of staying upright. "I'm calling my supervisor," HOA announced, pulling out her radio. "We have a situation with a disruptive family in the main hall." The static crackle of the radio filled the silence as other security officers began moving toward the commotion. Maria Santos continued recording, her hands steady despite her anger. She had seen enough institutional discrimination to know that documentation was crucial. This footage would be evidence of what really happened, proof that Devon was not faking his condition. Dr. Patricia Williams, who had been waiting for her own court appearance in a medical malpractice case, approached the group. As a neurologist, she immediately recognized Devon's condition and the severity of HOA's actions. "That child has clear signs of spastic cerebral palsy," she said, her professional authority evident in her voice. "Removing his mobility aid is equivalent to taking away a blind person's cane." HOA's face reddened with anger and embarrassment. "I don't need medical opinions from spectators. This is a security matter." Security from what? Dr. Williams pressed. A disabled child, attending a court hearing with his mother. What possible threat could he pose? The question hung in the air, highlighting the absurdity of the situation. Devon, barely 4 feet tall and weighing less than 70 pounds, was being treated like a criminal for using medical equipment. His crime was existing in a public space while disabled, challenging the narrow definition of normal that HOA's prejudices had constructed. More people began gathering, drawn by the commotion. Court clerks peered around corners, bailiffs exchanged worried glances, and attorneys paused their conversations to watch the scene unfold. The courthouse, usually a place of ordered procedure and quiet dignity, was transforming into a battleground over basic human rights. Keisha felt the weight of every stare, every whispered comment. She had faced discrimination before, but never so blatantly, never in such a public forum. The custody battle with Marcus had been difficult enough without this added humiliation. Now she worried about how this incident would affect their case, whether the judge would see her family as troublemakers. "Please," she said to HOA, her voice barely above a whisper, "just let me give him back his walker. He's not hurting anyone." HOA's response was swift and cruel. "Your son needs to learn that he can't manipulate every situation with his little act. Time for some tough love." The words sent a chill through the crowd. Devon's shoulders shook with silent sobs as he processed the accusation. At 12 years old, He was beginning to understand that not everyone would see him as a complete person, that his disability would always be questioned and scrutinized by those who couldn't imagine life beyond their own limited experience. Attorney Jennifer Kim stepped forward, her voice cutting through the tension. Officer Nguyen, I'm formally requesting that you return that mobility device immediately. What you're doing violates the Americans with Disabilities Act and several state statutes. Are you threatening me, counselor? Hoa's hand moved toward her belt, a gesture that sent ripples of alarm through the gathered crowd. I'm informing you of the law, Jennifer replied calmly, and I'm asking you to follow it. The standoff continued as backup security officers arrived, their presence adding to the already tense atmosphere. Devon's legs were beginning to give out entirely, his mother's support no longer enough to keep him upright. The physical strain was becoming dangerous, his condition making prolonged standing without assistance potentially harmful. Maria Santos, still recording, began providing live commentary to her social media followers. This is unbelievable. A security officer just threw a disabled child's walker across the courthouse floor and is refusing to return it. The kid can barely stand up. Her post began gaining traction immediately. Shares, comments, and reactions poured in from viewers outraged by the display of institutional cruelty. The hashtag Justice for Devon started trending within minutes, spreading the video far beyond the courthouse walls. Dr. Williams knelt beside Devon, her medical training taking over. Honey, I'm a doctor. Can you tell me if you're having any pain right now? Devon nodded, his voice small and strained. My legs hurt. They always hurt when I stand too long without my walker. The simple, honest statement from the child cut through all the adult arguments and posturing. Here was a boy in pain, being denied basic accommodation because of one person's prejudice and ignorance. The cruelty was undeniable, the injustice clear to everyone present. HOA's supervisor, Captain Robert Martinez, finally arrived on the scene. A 25-year veteran of courthouse security, he took in the situation with growing alarm. The crowd of onlookers, the phone cameras, the distressed child. Everything about this scenario spelled trouble for the department. What's the situation here? Martinez asked, though the evidence was scattered across the floor in the form of Devon's abandoned walker. HOA launched into her defense immediately. Sir, this family brought unauthorized equipment into the courthouse. When I asked them to remove it, they became belligerent and disruptive. The lies came so easily that several witnesses gasped audibly. Jennifer Kim stepped forward with her business card. Captain Martinez, I'm an attorney, and I witnessed this entire incident. Officer Nguyen's account is completely false. Martinez looked at the scene again, taking in Devon's obvious distress, his mother's protective stance, and the crowd of supporters who had gathered. He had seen enough discrimination cases to recognize a potential lawsuit in the making. The department couldn't afford another civil rights violation, especially not one involving a disabled child. Officer Nguyen, return the mobility device immediately, he ordered, his tone leaving no room for argument. HOA's face flushed with anger, but she complied, roughly shoving the walker toward Keisha. The device rolled across the marble floor, its wheels clicking against the stone as it came to rest near Devon's feet. Keisha quickly helped her son position himself behind the walker, watching as relief flooded his features. The familiar support of the metal frame allowed him to stand properly for the first time in 20 minutes, his posture straightening as the pressure on his legs diminished. Thank you, Devon whispered to his mother, his voice barely audible. The simple gratitude broke her heart, knowing that he was thanking her for securing something that should never have been taken away. Captain Martinez was already on his radio, calling for additional supervisors and beginning the process of damage control. The video footage from multiple phones would be impossible to suppress, and the department would need to respond quickly to prevent a public relations disaster. Dr. Williams remained beside Devon, monitoring his condition as he adjusted to having his walker back. "How are you feeling now, sweetheart?" "Better," Devon replied, managing a small smile. "My legs don't hurt as much when I can lean on it." The admission was another indictment of HOA's actions. She had forced a disabled child to endure unnecessary pain based on her own prejudices and assumptions. The medical evidence was clear, the witness testimony damning, and the video proof undeniable. Attorney Jennifer Kim was already making notes, her legal mind working through the implications of what had just occurred. "Mrs. Washington, I think you should consider filing a complaint with the court administration and possibly pursuing legal action." Keisha felt overwhelmed by the sudden attention and support. "I just want to get through our hearing. My son has been through enough trauma for one day." The custody hearing. In all the chaos, the original purpose of their visit had been forgotten. Marcus Washington's lawyer would be expecting them in court, and any delay would only complicate an already difficult situation. Keisha worried about how this incident would affect the judge's perception of her family. As if summoned by her thoughts, a court bailiff approached the group. "Mrs. Washington, Judge Chen is ready for your hearing." The timing couldn't have been worse. Devon was still shaken from his ordeal, his usual confidence replaced by uncertainty and fear. How could she expect him to face a judge after being publicly humiliated and accused of faking his disability? "We'll be right there," Keisha replied, her voice steadier than she felt. She turned to Devon, kneeling to his eye level. "Are you okay to go to court now, baby?" Devon nodded bravely, though his eyes were still red from crying. "I want to tell the judge what happened. She needs to know." The request surprised Keisha. Devon had always been mature for his age, forced to grow up quickly by the challenges his condition presented, but she had never expected him to want to confront authority figures about discrimination he had faced. "Okay," she agreed, taking his hand. "We'll tell her together." As they moved toward the courtroom, the crowd of supporters offered words of encouragement. Maria Santos promised to send the video to local news stations. Dr. Williams provided her contact information as a potential witness, and Jennifer Kim handed over her business card with an offer of legal representation. The courtroom was smaller than Devon had expected, with wood-paneled walls and fluorescent lighting that cast harsh shadows across the proceedings. Marcus Washington sat at the defendant's table with his attorney, looking uncomfortable as news of the hallway incident reached him through whispered conversations. Judge Patricia Chen entered through the side door, her black robes rustling as she took her seat at the bench. She was a stern-looking woman in her 60s, with graying hair pulled back in a tight bun, and sharp eyes that missed nothing. Her reputation for fairness was legendary in the legal community. "All rise," called the court clerk, and the room stood in unison. Devon struggled to his feet behind his walker, the familiar routine of court procedure providing some comfort after the chaos in the hallway. He watched Judge Chen's face carefully, looking for signs of the prejudice he had just encountered from Officer Nguyen. Instead, he saw something unexpected. Recognition flickered across the judge's features as she looked at him, followed by what appeared to be concern. She stared at Devon for a long moment before calling the court to order. "Please be seated," Judge Chen said, her voice carrying the authority of decades on the bench. "Before we begin today's proceedings, I understand there was an incident in the hallway involving the minor child The question caught everyone off guard. Court proceedings typically began with formal introductions and procedural matters, not discussions of external incidents. Marcus Washington's attorney, David Porter, looked confused as he shuffled through his papers. Keisha stood slowly, her heart pounding. Yes, Your Honor. My son Devon was accosted by a security officer who took his walker and accused him of faking his disability. Judge Chen's expression darkened. Mr. Clerk, please note that I'm calling for an immediate recess to address this matter. I want Captain Martinez and all relevant security personnel in my chambers within 5 minutes. The unusual request sent ripples of surprise through the courtroom. Devon watched in amazement as the judge who was supposed to decide his custody arrangement instead focused on the injustice he had suffered. She was treating his experience as important, his dignity as worthy of protection. Marcus Washington leaned forward, his voice tentative. Your Honor, perhaps we could address the custody matter first. My son has already been through enough today. The words were meant to be supportive, but they had the opposite effect. Judge Chen's gaze turned icy as she stared at Marcus. Your son. Are you claiming that Devon being discriminated against and humiliated in this courthouse is less important than your visitation schedule? The rebuke was sharp and public, leaving Marcus red-faced and speechless. His attorney quickly intervened. Your Honor, my client simply meant that perhaps we could handle both matters efficiently. The only matter I'm handling right now is ensuring that this courthouse is a safe space for all citizens, including disabled children. Judge Chen replied firmly. Court is in recess. As the judge disappeared into her chambers, Devon felt a strange mixture of vindication and confusion. The woman who held such power over his family's future was treating him like he mattered, like his rights were worth defending. It was a stark contrast to Officer Nguyen's dismissive cruelty. Keisha squeezed his hand gently. What do you think of Judge Chen? Devon considered the question seriously. She seems nice. She got mad when she heard about the Walker lady. The simple observation captured something important about the judge's character. In a system that often overlooked the needs of disabled people, Judge Chen had immediately prioritized Devon's dignity over procedural efficiency. Her reaction suggested a personal understanding of disability issues that went beyond legal requirements. In her chambers, Judge Chen was indeed angry. She had spent 30 years building a reputation for fairness and compassion, and the thought of disabled children being mistreated in her courthouse was intolerable. When Captain Martinez arrived with Officer Nguyen in tow, her displeasure was immediately apparent. Explain to me how a 12-year-old boy with cerebral palsy came to be accused of faking his disability in my courthouse, she demanded, her voice cutting through the formal atmosphere of the chamber. Captain Martinez shifted uncomfortably. Your Honor, there was a misunderstanding. Officer Nguyen believed the child was using unauthorized equipment. Unauthorized equipment. Judge Chen's voice rose dangerously. A medical walker prescribed by a doctor and protected under federal disability law. Hua spoke up, her voice defensive. Your Honor, the boy was walking normally when he entered the building. The disability seemed convenient for getting sympathy. The explanation only deepened Judge Chen's anger. Officer Nguyen, do you have any medical training that qualifies you to diagnose cerebral palsy? No, Your Honor, but I have experience with people who try to work the system. You have experience with disabled children trying to work the system. Judge Chen's tone was incredulous. 12-year-olds with cerebral palsy are known for their elaborate cons. The questions exposed the absurdity of HOA's position. There was no logical foundation for her actions, no reasonable explanation for her behavior. She had acted out of prejudice and ignorance, harming a child in the process. Judge Chen turned to Captain Martinez. "I want a full investigation into this incident. Officer Nguyen will be suspended immediately pending a review of her conduct. And I want new disability awareness training for all courthouse personnel." The swift action sent a clear message about the judge's priorities. Devon's rights mattered. His dignity was worth protecting, and discrimination would not be tolerated in her courthouse. The institutional response was exactly what should have happened from the beginning. When court reconvened an hour later, the atmosphere had changed dramatically. News of the investigation had spread through the building, and staff members were being extra careful to accommodate all visitors with disabilities. The incident had exposed systemic problems that required immediate attention. Judge Chen returned to the bench with a determined expression. "Before we continue with custody matters, I want to address what happened to Devon Washington today. This court apologizes for the discrimination and mistreatment he experienced." The formal apology was unprecedented. Devon straightened in his chair, his walker positioned beside him like a faithful companion. For the first time that day, he felt truly seen and valued by the system that was supposed to protect him. "Devon," Judge Chen continued, looking directly at him, "I want you to know that using your walker is not only allowed, but encouraged in this courthouse. Anyone who suggests otherwise will answer to me personally." The promise was both professional and personal, delivered with the full weight of judicial authority. Devon nodded solemnly, understanding that something important had just been pledged on his behalf. Marcus Washington watched the exchange with growing unease. He had come to court hoping to gain more time with his son, but the day's events had revealed aspects of Devon's life that he hadn't fully appreciated. The discrimination his son faced, the strength his ex-wife showed in protecting him, the courage Devon displayed in standing up for himself. These were not things that could be addressed through a custody modification. "Your Honor," Marcus said, rising from his chair, "I'd like to withdraw my petition for increased visitation." The announcement surprised everyone in the courtroom. David Porter looked at his client with confusion, while Keisha felt a mixture of relief and bewilderment. Devon simply stared at his father, trying to understand what had changed. Marcus continued, his voice thick with emotion. "Today showed me that my son has challenges I didn't fully understand. His mother has been protecting him and advocating for him in ways I never appreciated. He doesn't need the disruption of increased visitation right now." The admission was both humble and painful. Marcus had missed years of his son's life, failing to understand the daily struggles that Devon faced, or the incredible strength that Keisha had shown in raising him. The custody battle had been about his own needs, rather than his son's best interests. Judge Chen studied Marcus carefully. "Mr. Washington, are you certain about this decision? Custody matters shouldn't be decided based on a single incident." "I'm certain, Your Honor. My son has an amazing mother who fights for him every day. He has a stable home where he's loved and protected. I don't want to disrupt that." Devon looked between his parents, processing the unexpected turn of events. "Dad, you can still visit me. Just because you're not going to court doesn't mean I don't want to see you." The mature response from the 12-year-old brought tears to Marcus's eyes. Despite everything he had been through that day, Devon was still thinking about maintaining their relationship. The generosity of spirit was humbling. "I'd like that, son. Maybe we can work something out that's good for everyone." Judge Chen nodded approvingly. "I'm dismissing the custody petition as withdrawn. I encourage both parents to continue working together in Devon's best interests." As the formal proceedings concluded, Devon felt a strange mixture of exhaustion and triumph. The day that had begun with such promise had turned into a nightmare of discrimination and humiliation, but it had also revealed the strength of the community that surrounded him. Strangers had stood up for his rights, professionals had offered their support, and even the judge had prioritized his dignity over procedural convenience. Outside the courtroom, Maria Santos was waiting with her phone, ready to interview Devon about his experience. "How are you feeling after everything that happened today?" Devon thought carefully before answering. "I'm sad that the Walker lady was mean to me, but I'm happy that so many people helped. Maybe other kids won't have to go through what I did." The response was both wise and hopeful, reflecting a maturity beyond his years. Devon understood that his experience, while painful, could help prevent similar incidents in the future. The video footage and public attention would create accountability that might protect other disabled children. Dr. Williams approached with her business card. "Devon, I work with kids who have cerebral palsy. If you ever want to talk to someone who understands what you're going through, please call me." The offer of professional support was another unexpected gift from the day's events. Devon had never met another doctor who specialized in his condition, and the possibility of having someone to talk to about his experiences was appealing. Attorney Jennifer Kim had prepared a summary of Devon's legal options. "Mrs. Washington, I'd like to help you file a civil rights complaint against Officer Nguyen and the Courthouse Security Department. What happened today was illegal, and there should be consequences." Keisha felt overwhelmed by the sudden legal possibilities. "I need to think about it. Today has been enough confrontation for now." The response was understandable, given the emotional toll of the day's events. Fighting discrimination was exhausting, and the decision to pursue legal action required careful consideration of the potential benefits and costs. As they left the courthouse, Devon walked slowly with his walker, savoring the freedom of movement it provided. The simple act of using his mobility device without harassment felt like a victory after hours of controversy. "Mom, do you think the Walker lady will be nicer to other kids now?" Keisha considered the question carefully. "I think today taught her something important about treating people with respect. And if it didn't, Judge Chen made sure there would be consequences." The investigation into Officer Nguyen's conduct moved swiftly. The video evidence was damning, the witness testimony consistent, and the violation of federal disability law undeniable. Within a week, she had been terminated from her position and faced potential criminal charges for violating Devon's civil rights. The courthouse implemented new policies immediately. All security personnel were required to complete disability awareness training, and specific protocols were established for accommodating visitors with mobility devices. Devon's experience had catalyzed systemic change that would benefit countless future visitors. The video of the incident continued to spread on social media, generating millions of views and sparking national conversations about disability rights and institutional discrimination. Devon became an unexpected symbol of resilience and courage. His calm dignity in the face of prejudice, inspiring others to speak out about their own experiences. Local disability rights organizations invited Devon to speak at their events, recognizing his story as a powerful example of how discrimination affects real people. His mother worried about the attention, but Devon embraced the opportunity to educate others about cerebral palsy and the importance of treating all people with dignity. Marcus Washington began attending disability rights meetings, educating himself about his son's condition and the challenges he faced. The courthouse incident had opened his eyes to aspects of Devon's life that he had never fully understood. He became a better father through learning about his son's experiences. Judge Chen established a special committee to review courthouse accessibility and ensure that all visitors with disabilities were properly accommodated. Her swift response to Devon's situation set a precedent for how discrimination should be handled in the judicial system. Dr. Williams began working with Devon and his family, providing medical support and connecting them with other families dealing with cerebral palsy. The professional relationship that began in a courthouse hallway grew into a meaningful source of guidance and support. Maria Santos used her platform to continue highlighting disability rights issues, ensuring that Devon's story was part of a broader conversation about equality and justice. Her documentation of the incident had provided crucial evidence for the investigation and ongoing legal proceedings. Attorney Jennifer Kim successfully filed a civil rights lawsuit on Devon's behalf, resulting in a significant settlement that would help fund his future medical needs and education. The legal victory sent a clear message that discrimination against disabled individuals would not be tolerated. 6 months later, Devon returned to the courthouse for a different reason. He had been invited to speak at a ceremony recognizing the new accessibility measures that had been implemented in response to his experience. The same hallway where he had been humiliated was now decorated with banners celebrating disability rights and inclusion. "I used to be scared of this place," Devon said into the microphone, his voice carrying clearly through the marble hall. "But now I know that when people stand up for what's right, things can change." The audience, which included courthouse staff, disability advocates, and families from throughout the community, applauded enthusiastically. Devon's transformation from victim to advocate was complete, his story becoming a source of inspiration for others facing similar challenges. Judge Chen, who had been instrumental in the changes, watched with pride as Devon spoke about his experience. "This young man taught us all something important about courage and dignity. His willingness to share his story has made this courthouse a better place for everyone." The recognition was meaningful, but Devon's greatest satisfaction came from knowing that other disabled children would not face the same discrimination he had experienced. The policies and training programs that resulted from his ordeal would protect countless future visitors. As the ceremony concluded, Devon walked through the courthouse with his walker, greeting staff members who now understood the importance of his mobility device. The same hallway that had once been a place of humiliation was now a symbol of progress and inclusion. His mother watched with tears in her eyes as Devon shook hands with Captain Martinez, who had implemented the new training programs. The transformation was remarkable, from a place of discrimination to a model of accessibility and respect. "Thank you for standing up for me," Devon said to the captain, his words carrying the weight of genuine gratitude. Captain Martinez smiled, his own understanding of disability issues having deepened through the investigation and training process. "Thank you for teaching us how to do better. Your courage made all the difference." The exchange represented more than just politeness. It was a recognition of how individual actions could create systemic change. Devon's refusal to accept discrimination had sparked a transformation that would benefit countless others. As they left the courthouse that day, Devon paused to look back at the building where his life had changed so dramatically. The marble columns and granite steps looked the same, but everything else had been transformed. The policies, the training, the attitudes, all had been improved because one 12-year-old boy had refused to accept injustice. "Ready to go home?" his mother asked, her voice full of pride and love. Devon nodded, adjusting his grip on his walker. "Yeah, I'm ready, but I'm not scared of this place anymore. It's different now." The simple statement captured the essence of what had been accomplished. Fear had been replaced by hope, discrimination by inclusion, and prejudice by understanding. The courthouse that had once been a place of trauma was now a symbol of justice and equality. As they walked down the steps together, Devon's walker clicking rhythmically against the stone, other visitors smiled and waved. The community that had formed around his story continued to grow, united by a shared commitment to dignity and respect for all people. The afternoon sun cast long shadows across the courthouse steps, but the light seemed brighter than before. Devon had faced his greatest challenge and emerged victorious, not through conflict, but through the courage to stand up for what was right. His story would continue to inspire others, proving that even the smallest voice could create the most powerful change. In the end, Devon Washington had done more than survive discrimination. He had transformed it into opportunity, turned pain into purpose, and converted injustice into inspiration. The 12-year-old boy with cerebral palsy had taught an entire community about the true meaning of courage, dignity, and the power of standing together for what is right. His walker, once a symbol of limitation in the eyes of prejudice, had become a testament to resilience and the triumph of the human spirit. Every step he took was a victory. Every click of the wheels against the pavement, a reminder that progress was possible when people refused to accept the unacceptable. The courthouse behind them stood as a monument to change, its halls now echoing with the voices of all who entered, regardless of their differences. Devon's story had become part of its history, a reminder that justice delayed is not justice denied when people have the courage to fight for what they believe. As mother and son disappeared into the crowd, their bond strengthened by the trials they had faced together. The courthouse continued its work of serving the community, but now it did so with a deeper understanding of its responsibilities, a clearer vision of its mission, and an unwavering commitment to treating every person who entered its doors with the dignity and respect they deserved. The legacy of Devon Washington would live on in every accessibility ramp, every training session, every moment when someone chose inclusion over exclusion. His courage had created ripples that would spread far beyond the marble halls where his story began, touching lives and changing hearts for generations to come.